Hello YouTube, Sidekick here with another installment of An Iron Bomber's Guide to the Galaxy. And we're starting a new series today that I call The Last of the Iron Bombers. In this series we're going to take a look at the last two Western aircraft that were designed specifically to deliver unguided munitions against ground targets. And specifically I'm referring to the AV8B Harrier and the A-10 Warthog. Although both of these aircraft have gone on to become platforms principally for the delivery of precision-guided munitions in a SAM sanitized environment, they started out life expecting to deliver unguided bombs, rockets, and cannon rounds against masses of Soviet armor, which were supported by an integrated air defense network. In this series, what I plan to do is introduce each aircraft and its capabilities in DCS, and then spend a bit of time on the range looking at how to deliver the weapons, and then go out and do some typical missions for these planes. Now, one thing to note, since this is the Iron Bomber's Guide, I'm going to focus on the state of these planes up until about the early 90s when they were still primarily delivering unguided weapons. By the time of the Second Gulf War, both platforms were still in service and had been adapted to the modern reality of precision-guided munitions and standoff weapons. And I'm not really going to spend a lot of time there because other people have done it a lot more justice than I can. So let's get started, though, with the AV8B Harrier II. The first thing you need to understand about the AV8B is that it was designed to meet the needs of the U.S. Marine Corps. The Marines loved their A4 Skyhawks and had resisted the Navy's attempt to have them replaced with the A7 at the end of the Vietnam era. As far as the Marines were concerned, the A4 was a straightforward, uncomplicated aircraft that was capable of putting rounds on target when and where they were required, and that's what they wanted with a replacement. When the Marine Corps began looking for a replacement for its A4 Skyhawks in the early 1970s, they quickly settled on the need for a VSTOL-capable aircraft. They'd been trying the first version of the Harrier, the AV8A, for a number of years, but felt that it was kind of underpowered and short-ranged. Effectively, they wanted a plane that could combine many of the characteristics of their beloved Skyhawks with the tactical flexibility and responsiveness offered by the Harrier. And so the concept of the AV8B was born. It was designed to support the U.S. Marines in combat, and while its missions included reconnaissance and battlefield interdiction, there is no doubt that the main expected mission was the close air support of troops in contact with the enemy. That enemy was almost certainly expected to be some variant of Warsaw Pact armed forces. Although in contrast to the U.S. Army, the Marines probably didn't expect their operations to focus necessarily on defeating massive armored forces on the plains of Northern Europe. So, unlike the A-10, the Harrier did not focus exclusively on battlefield survivability. Instead, the Harrier was designed to be fast, flexible, and responsive to Marine expeditionary forces, which were mainly expected to be light infantry formations, deployed to everything from performing amphibious landings to protecting U.S. citizens and assets in far-flung parts of the globe. Design began in 1973, and the first planes were delivered in 1981. This was the so-called day attack version. The night attack version, which is modeled in DCS, featured a forward-looking IR sensor and also an upgraded engine, and that started entering service in 1989. The Harrier saw extensive action in the First Gulf War in 1990 and the bombing campaign against Yugoslavia in 1999, and it's also seen service in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya, and it continues to serve in the Marine Corps until it is replaced by the F-35. The important thing to remember is that when it was being designed, the Harrier II was actually intended to be a light attack aircraft in the mode of the A4, but with VSTOL characteristics and modern avionics. An author named Lon Nordin, who's written extensively about the Harrier, says in one of his books, quote, "But initially the day attack jet was just a hovering A4M with an INS, improved controls, displays, and better systems," unquote. The core of the weapons delivery system of the Harrier was something called the Angle Rate Bombing System, or ARBS, or ARBS. A version of this system was originally actually installed in the A4M. Now, note that the A4M is a much later version of the Skyhawk than the A4E that is available in DCS. The A4Ms had a bombing computer that could provide CCIP, And ARBS was designed to enhance this system by identifying and tracking targets more accurately on the ground using both visual and laser tracking. The more accurate localization of the target provided a more accurate bombing cue and also allowed the pilot to let the system automate weapons delivery. As an early Harrier pilot said, quote, "Bombing during daylight was easy, and the pilot had many options. As he rolled in on the target, he could immediately convert from CCIP to auto drop or toss with a simple thumb selection on the stick. Using the ARBS sweetened the solution by allowing better pipper placement on the target. The beauty of the ARBS was that it allowed pilots to use the systems that suited them best, resulting in extremely fine accuracy," unquote. So you'll note that a lot of people tend to think of auto mode or using the ARBS and DCS as kind of a CCRP mode meant for level bombing, but I would say based on that description that that's not at all the way pilots saw it when it was first implemented. Now, as far as weapons that the Harrier was designed to employ, they basically boil down to the types that we've talked about in this series. And when the first Harriers were delivered, they hadn't changed all that much since the Vietnam era. They included the Mark 80 series bombs up to the Mark 83 1,000 pounder, Mark 20 Rockeye cluster bombs, Mark 77 napalm canisters, 2.75-inch rockets, and a 25mm cannon pod that could be carried beneath the fuselage. So when it left the drawing board, the AV8B was definitely an iron bomber at heart. Maybe the last one designed that way. So let's take this last of the iron bombers out on the range and see what it can do. Okay, so here we are headed for the iron bombing range in our AV8B. Let's assume it's around 1990. We're flying with some Mark 82 bombs, and the threat environment we're expecting is AAA and IR SAM, so basically Gulf War type thing. So with that in mind, we want to get an accuracy of about 25 meters with the bombs, and we want to pull that above 5,000 feet, and that's because Mark 82 bombs have a circular probability of around 30 meters, and we know from the threat videos that 5,000 feet is a pretty good floor if what you're facing is point defense, AAA, and IR SAMs. Okay, let's get ourselves fenced in. We've got waypoint 1 selected. We hit the designate key, and then we select back on the dual mode tracker. We can see that we're tracking the target. So we designate that target with a TDC down, and then when I flip through, we should have a T0, and we do. Okay, so we're on the target. Now let's get our Mark 82 selected, and we're going to go for CCIP, make sure they're fused, and we're going to drop them in pairs. Okay, so we're ready. Let's get the autopilot off, and we'll do our trim run over the target. Basically, we just want to do a shallow dive, advance the power to maximum, and then make sure it's trimmed out so we're not, the nose is basically staying level. And hopefully this means that at the bottom of our dive, we won't be having to pull or push the stick to keep us in a constant dive. That is looking pretty good, so we're going to put ourselves in air-to-ground mode, and master arm is on because the CCIP is not flashing, and it's time to start our first circuit. So we just go up and around. We're looking for about 12,500 feet. First thing we're going to look for is our beam position, which is going to be at about 210 degrees, just a beam of the target. Oops, we're a little bit high. You just got to come around a little bit more here, and we're going to need to pull back on that speed because we want to be rolling in really not much more than about 350 knots. Okay, there's 210. We're going to buy it just a little bit because we're a little late on the beam position, so we'll just keep going around. Try and lose some height, lose some speed. All right, here we are, coming up to the roll in. And right about there. So we're going to roll in, lift vector to target, pull up until we get the flight path vector, approaching the target, try to roll the flight path vector out over the target. Oops, slid by it a little bit, so now we got to move it back slowly. Then we're going to pull the flight path vector up to an aim off mark, probably similar to what we used in the A4, and now we're just going to wait. And pickle. Now, obviously we pulled out quite a bit lower than our target of 5,000 feet. Let's see how we did on the accuracy's fine. We're just a little bit low. So I think we're going to have to try dropping or starting our roll in from a higher altitude. And this is, I kind of expected that. If you read the accounts from the Gulf War, Harriers usually started their runs at 15,000 feet and maybe even higher than that. So I think that's what we'll go for. We'll try a 15,000 foot run, see how that goes. So once again, we're just coming around, pulling up, and try to pull around to that abeam position at 210 degrees. Try not to let the altitude get too high. It's easy in the Harrier to actually overshoot, which is not a problem for most of the other jets. And also try and pull back on the speed, coming around to the abeam, maybe a little bit too far. Okay, let's go down a little bit. Yeah, we're in a little bit tight, but it's not going to be a bad pattern. Pull back on the speed. Let's try and lose altitude so we're in around 15,000. Start pulling around. And we're looking for a good roll in position here. A little bit tighter. We're a little bit farther out than I'd like. Getting close. There we go. Let's roll in there. Lift vector to target. Fly the flight path vector to the target. Roll out. Now move the target off. My fat fingers have moved the target this finger off. It doesn't really matter. Okay, flight path vector over target. Pull up to an aim off mark. Let's put the aim off mark farther away so we pull out higher. And just wait and pickle. All right, let's see how we did both in the pull up altitude and in the bomb drop. Okay, we're above 5,000 feet. How's the accuracy? Pretty good. All right, well that works pretty well. By the way, as we start our next pattern run here, just should point out that if you want to know more about the patterns we're flying, you should check the last video where we talked about practice patterns. But here we go around again. This time, let's take it up even higher. Let's go up to 18,000 feet, see if there's any added benefit to rolling in even higher. Because I do know that I've read accounts of Harrier pilots talking about rolling in at 18,000 feet, believe it or not. So let's take it up to there. Just try not to get it too far beyond 18, so we're coming back down. There's the beam position there, maybe even a little past the beam, so we'll keep coming around. Get the speed knocked down, especially if we're rolling in higher. We don't want to be rolling in fast. All right, here we are, a little bit under 18K. We'll pull up a little bit more. Just get ourselves pulled around here. Okay, stay flattened out, get in a little bit closer. Keep the altitude. Bump it up just a bit there. And roll in right around there. And here we go, lift vector to target. Pull the flight path vector up to the target, try not to overshoot it, and roll it in. There we go. All right, now line up and pull up to an aim off mark again. Let's pick an aim off mark that's well beyond the target. And just wait. Keep
Centered up. Pickle. How'd we do? Well, we didn't really pull out any higher than the last time, despite starting higher, so I'm not sure we gained a lot. Good hits, but I'm not sure we gained a whole heck of a lot by starting at 18,000 feet. So I think we're going to keep our runs at 15. So we're going to try and roll in at 15,000 feet. You know, big part of the trick is to make the aim off mark far enough away from the target that we're pulling up high. But I think we can do that for 15,000 feet. So let's make another run here, and let's actually see what some Mark 82 bombs can do. So we'll go over to the 3 target range there. And the first target has soft skin vehicles. So we're going to aim for the center of that 25 meter target. There's a bunch of vehicles, some at 10 meters, some at 25. We'll see how many of them we can damage if we put a couple of Mark 82s in the middle of that target. So we just need to go out here a little bit farther because we are going to have to change targets, which means redesignating, so we need a little bit more room to do that. Alright, so we're coming around. There's the target, and we've selected waypoint 2, so that's the target. Designate, and then flip through, and we're back on T0, and we got a target. So now we just need to turn away so we can see the target off our left shoulder here, and pick a roll in, and we're pretty close already. Let's roll in there. So, same procedure, lift vector to target, pull the flight path vector up to the target and start to roll it out gently, gently, gently. Try not to go too far past it. Now get ourselves lined up. Get it lined up, start pulling beyond the target for a good aim off, and pickle in the middle, and pull off, and we kept it above 5,000. Let's see how we did on the target. Well, pretty much in the middle of the target. And it looks like we did a pretty good number on those trucks. All of the 10 meter trucks are gone, and at least a few of the 25 meter trucks. So I think we're, circular error probability of 30 meters on a Mark 82 bomb, at least on soft skin vehicles, looks about right to me. Okay, well, let's do one last test here. We'll go around again, and we'll take the second target this time. And this time it's kind of thin-skinned armored vehicles, so artillery pieces, IFVs, that sort of thing. So let's see if we can put a couple of Mark 82s in the middle of that collection and see how much damage a Mark 82 does. We still got trucks exploding down there. So no question, thin-skinned vehicles not going to survive a Mark 82 strike within 25 meters. But let's see how some armored vehicles do. So same thing, we'll go out here a ways, just to give us time to designate. And we're up to 15,000 feet, so we'll start pulling back the power, get the speed down where we want it. So we'll come around and start looking for the next target. Keep pulling around, keep pulling around. Okay, should be getting pretty close to being able to get it on screen. There it is. That's waypoint 2. That was our last target. That's waypoint 3. Designate that, and it becomes T0. And we just have to aim off a little bit so we can roll in properly. There it is. And again, we're pretty close to the roll-in mark already. Get in a little bit tighter. All right, let's roll it in there. Okay, same as ever. Flight path or lift vector to target. Flight path vector rollout. Get it over the target. Get it lined up. Pull to the aim off. nice distant aim off there, and then just wait for the cross to come to the target. Right about there. A little bit right of the target that time. Let's see how we do. And we pulled out a little low too, so we probably should have aimed off a little bit farther. Well, those are pretty good hits, but what damage did we do? Well, the vehicle we hit, and the guy to the right of that, but other than that, okay, that's the original, that's the target from last time. Let's scroll up. Not a whole lot of damage to anything, even 10 meters away. So even lightly armored vehicles, Mark 82 bombs, at least in the DCS universe, you're not really going to be doing much damage to anything more than 10 meters away with the Mark 82. So we file that away for future reference. Now in the next video we'll get out the Mark 83s and see how they do. And then we'll also get the Rockeyes out, and just so we get some idea of the weapons effects before we go start flying missions to try and use these things. So we'll just do a quick flyby so you can see what damage we have done here. Like I said, soft skin vehicles pretty much meet, but the other armored vehicles survive pretty well, the Mark 82 bombs. So, as always, if you're enjoying these videos in this series, please subscribe and get that notification on so you know when the next one's coming out. For now, this is going to be Sidekick, signing off.